Looking for a cosmic adventure like no other? Zatswan, Multiversal Guardian is a high-stakes comic book journey through the multiverse with stunning art and an unforgettable hero. Get your copy today in ebook and paperback formats. Link in the description.
Hi everybody, this is Neil Allen, the comic creator behind Zatswan Multiversal Guardian, the 130-page cosmic fantasy graphic novel, which you can purchase at the link in the description on Amazon.com. You can pick it up in ebook format, which is only $2.99, or if you want an actual book in your hand, you can get the paperback version. And I am working on the next volume of Zatswan right now. We're going to be coloring in this picture here, and what I'm going to use to do that is Dr. P.H. Martin's Radiant Watercolor Concentrate. So here are all the colors I have in the Radiant line. So this is what it looks like when applied to actual watercolor, and I've already picked out my colors. We have cherry red here, scarlet, crimson, so a lot of reds as you're seeing, mahogany, and I have a black here. And this character that we're seeing looks like he's reaching critical mass. So we're going to color him in. It's going to be a largely monochrome piece on him. We'll see, and I have a palette off to the side off camera. And while I color him in, I'm going to talk about ramble on while I'm doing artwork about comic shops and whether I think they're still like a viable like means of like selling your comic essentially. So on the one hand, it is good to get let's get underway on this character. So we're going to be doing some watercoloring. So we're going to start with the lighter colors first and build up layers and layers and layers. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a general red over him. That sounds like a good idea. So first, let's wet the area around him. So about comic shops and their viability. So yeah, there's been discussion about that. A lot of comic book stores have like been going out of business lately, just because, you know, the inventory really isn't moving. So, you know, as a person who like before, that used to be like the way to get your comics sold. You wanted to get inside of a comic book shop. That was like the primary mechanism for how a person would sell comics. That has obviously changed, especially for like independent people like me. There are other avenues we can take and actually, I would say, be more successful in. Like if you're an independent creator like myself, going into the comic book shop, okay, yeah, it's cool if you can do that, because yeah, you should take every avenue available to you to, you know, sell your products. But at the same time, it's like, I don't like bending over backwards to get into a comic book shop. It's just not, your energy is probably better allocated elsewhere, because I have skepticism that you would be like, especially in like say my shoes, very successful there. And why is that? Well, a big overarching reason is that what is being successful there? Like, I thought I had persimmon out here. Where is that? Did I put it back? It's a color I want to get. Oh, I did, yeah. So, yeah, I think that there are successes in comic book shops, like people liking Scott Snyder's Absolute Batman. This is what I was looking for. So every now and then that happens, but first of all, the successes, it seems to me, are getting fewer and fewer. People are just less interested in the products that are being sold there, which is largely Marvel and DC. So that leads us to our next factor. I think when a lot of people go to comic book shops, they're looking for Marvel and DC. They're not necessarily looking for a Zatswan. Now, there are going to be some more curious and open-minded people, obviously. And also, the retailers aren't going to be focused on selling a Zatswan. They're going to be focused on selling, you know, what's been bringing them to the table. Or what has been selling for them, which is going to be your Batman and Spider-Man. They're not thinking about you, unless you happen to have some really good relationship with the retailer, and even then, you're only going to have a good relationship with so many retailers, or just one or none, which is the likely scenario. So, yeah, the audience there isn't likely to be interested in your product if you're like an independent like me. Now, they might be into image comics, but something like Zatswan, I'm kind of skeptical. Like the Zatswan audience would per se be inside the comic shop. And, I think comic shops appeal to people who've been going there for decades. And, people who are used to looking for the comics that they've been looking for decades. And Zatswan's not going to be that, obviously. This is like a brand new, original idea. It's not going to be appealing to those people the way like a Spider-Man might, or a Batman. So, that's one of the things that makes that makes that model not appealing. It's just kind of on a downward trajectory, and I don't think the people there are going to be looking or interested per se in my comic. That's just my intuition, my gut reaction, or my gut feeling on the topic. So getting into a comic book shop, now that would be cool, but I mean, there's nothing bad about that, but at the same time, it's like not even it's not like the most appealing thing or anything I per se strongly aspire to do. I mean, if that were to happen, that would be neat. What do I think about comic book shops moving forward? I actually think that there is some. I'm not one of these people that's like, there's no hope for them, they're just going under, and that's that. Not really. I think where comic book shops can shine is not necessarily in the product they offer, because those products can be had other places nowadays. It's mostly in the experiences they may offer. And what I am actually seeing is that what is very popular is like tabletop gaming. And I'm seeing like a lot of shops kind of pivot towards that. Like tabletop gaming is a really popular thing. And trading card games and things like that. And I'll give my my opinion on why those things are popular, like why they're still enduring so much, and like comic books, the typical like Western stuff like Marvel, DC, and Image is not lately. So yeah, he's looking very red, but what we're gonna do is like let these layers dry and like put other layers on them and darken them up some. I could give my opinion on that, like why tabletop gaming is still like loved and a thing. I think for one thing, because a good game is just fun. Like good tabletop games and trading card games are fun, but they offer something very unique, I think, that comics don't as much. And that is a social experience. You know, like for some people, I mean, well, the thing about geeks and introverts and people like that, I think they like to socialize a lot, but the way that they socialize might not be the stuff that a lot of other people or that society has kind of deemed the cool thing to do, like going to the club and, quote unquote, partying and stuff like that. A lot of geeks and introverts, I'm not speaking like, and I don't want to speak for everybody, and I don't want to speak for every single instance, but a lot of times I think that won't hold like a lot of appeal for them for various reasons, I think. Even though like society is kind of dubbed that sort of thing the quote unquote cool thing to do. Like if you were to ask me, but at the same time, like geeks and introverts still love to socialize. I think they just like to do so on their terms and in regards to things that will interest them, so and a tabletop gaming and trading cards, things like that, those are things that will interest them, and they still get that social aspect, but in a way that kind of appeals to them more than, the quote unquote typical idea of partying. So, I mean, I could just, there are a lot of people that on a Saturday night, they would rather be gathered around playing Dungeons and Dragons than, going to the club or something like that, So, where are they going to do that though? Where are they going to find I'm just letting this we're going to let this dry a little bit. I think what I want to do is kind of just work on this head and get a good feel for what I'm going to do doing the head, and then I can apply that to the rest of the body so I can get an idea of what it'll look more finished just from this area here, and that'll give me more of an idea of how I want to approach the rest of the body. So as I was saying, like, okay, well, where are they going to play these games? Where are they going to find like-minded people? Where are they going to gather to play? Yeah, there are things you can do that online, and people do, and that's cool. But like the online experience is kind of its own thing. It's not the same. That's not to say it's bad, but it's not the same thing as gathering around a table, setting up the game, and eating some pizza or whatever. That is a different sort of experience that you actually need, to be physically present for, to fully experience, I would say. So I'm seeing a lot of shops just looking around, like pivoting more towards tabletop gaming, and they sell things like painting for miniatures and offering game nights and stuff like that. Okay, I think that's like something that online can't fully replicate, and that a lot of people still want because yeah, like geeks and introverts and geeks plus people who are geeks plus introverts, yeah, they still like want that social experience, and that's like a shop like that could be a cool place to offer it. And of course, then it's like there are comics and other things sold on the side. Um, but it seems to me that I see there's still like a lot of interest in that sort of thing. Trading card games, tabletop gaming, um, having a gathering place to play those things. Like American Western comics. Um, it seems to me, just from my observations, that that interest is kind of dying down. So I think shops can survive, but they would need to pivot to more kind of gaming and experience um, based models rather than just I sell these pamphlets. Because I think if you're like in the business of just selling pamphlets, like those floppy comics, um, that's not gonna pan out too well like these days if that's all you're doing. I think because the interest just isn't there, and I guess we can go into the whys and stuff like that. So as it turns out, I am not selling, for better or worse, maybe someday, but I'm not selling a board game or a trading card game. I'm selling a comic. You know what I mean? So the interest just does not seem to be there. The interest right now just is not there for, this type of comic in that environment. Or I won't say that. The interest for these types of comics, I think, still is there, but the interest in that whole, like, comic book shop model, Marvel and DC, I'm seeing that starting to wane. And I think the reasons for that are just the interest was always, of course, on a downward trajectory for like forever. It's just like, how long can you keep doing that until people just kind of check out? How many of these events can you do until people just check out? How many of these reboots can you do before people just check out? And you're going to be getting diminishing returns on that stuff. And I think people are just kind of checking out. First of all, they're not. The absolute stuff I've heard is doing pretty good for them, for DC, so good for them, but at the same time, it's like, the stuff I think is getting worse. The audience is getting more jaded and more kind of hip, like smartened up to what's going on. Like, what because you can't keep playing the same tricks on them over and over and over and over again. It's like, okay, so you've got them in a state where like they feel that nothing really matters. And before it used to be just like, oh, character deaths, like that didn't matter. They didn't put a lot of stock in that. But now I think these companies, Marvel and DC, have the readers, at the stage where it's like, it's not just character deaths that don't matter. It's like nothing matters. This continuity doesn't matter, because what difference does it make when you're doing these reboots left and right and nothing really sticks? And even when you don't reboot, even when, like, you can just, these days you can just disregard continuity without even needing the reboot. That's how loosey goosey they've gotten with the way they're doing comics these days. And I am typically like ahead of the curve with stuff like this. Like, I think my tolerance level is low, and I notice like stupid crap really fast, and I react on it really fast. So I noticed this, and I got out. I noticed this when I was reading Green Lantern comics, and it's kind of interesting how long ago this was. So I was reading this comic, Green Lantern Lost Army, and so the guy who was writing it, Cullen Bunn, had some sort of like falling out with DC. I don't know exactly what the details of that were about. I asked him one time because he was doing like an AMA and Ask Me Anything, and he just ignored that question. So I do know that something happened between him and DC editorial. He went from writing like 8 books at once to just not even being with the company, and then I think he went on to do X-Men, like X-Men Red or whatever color X-Men he was working on. I don't remember exactly, and I don't think he's been at DC since then, and that was years ago. So he had some kind of problem midway through his Green Lantern Lost Army run. I wonder if he left because of Lost Army. I wonder. Quite possibly. So what happened was Bunn just suddenly, immediately left. Green Lantern Lost Army was like quickly like canceled. Like it wouldn't continue. And the thing about it is like the story left off in this kind of unresolved state. So then DC comes up with this new book that's supposed to pick up from where Lost Army left off, called Green Lantern Core Edge of Oblivion. And the funny thing about it is it did not pick up at all from where Green Lantern Lost Army left off. There was so much stuff that didn't even make sense. It's like you're kind of picking up from it, but you're also not. And I don't want to go into like all the specifics on how that situation worked, but it wasn't really picking up from where the previous story left off. So I'm kind of like, okay, this story legit doesn't make any sense. Like, this legitimately doesn't make sense. Like, the way that you're writing this story doesn't make sense. You're not picking up directly from where the last one left off. You're picking up maybe 40% of the way there, but not 100%. And it's like, so basically what it was telling me, what DC Comics at the time was like letting me know, was that their stories don't really matter. Like, they don't even make sense. Like, when I was thinking, like, your whole thing, your one job is to tell stories. And what happens, like, when those stories just don't make sense? Like, well, what happens is you're telling your reader that, you know, your reader doesn't need to invest in your stories because you can't even get them to make sense with each other. And I was like, I don't believe what I'm seeing here. Like, for me, I guess it crossed some kind of boundary. I'm, paying money for these comics. I'm expecting them, I'm trying to enjoy them. I'm trying to get into your thing, but how can I do this when the stories don't make sense with each other? Like, literally, your narrative doesn't make sense. And the way it seemed to me DC was approaching this was like, just roll with it. It's not that important. Just see if you enjoy the story. This was back in maybe 2018 or something like that. Maybe this was a long time ago at this point. And I was like, that doesn't work for me, brother. It's like, that doesn't work for me. Like, I actually take storytelling pretty serious. And the reason why is, I took it serious then, I take it serious now that I'm, the one telling the story. And the reason why I take storytelling so serious is because, to the point where it's like sacred to me, people are legitimately giving, I'll include myself in there as a storyteller, people are giving us their time and their resources just for us to tell them a story. You need to respect that, because don't take that for granted. That's actually really deep. People are giving you their time and their time and their resources, which are their two most, or their time and their money, which are their two most valuable resources, for you to tell them a story. And for you to not respect that, for you to just take that for granted, yeah, that actually, believe it or not, crosses a boundary with me. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not down for that, so I'm going to check out of your story. So basically what I'm setting up is that I saw that back then. A lot of other readers were just like, at the time, they're like, just roll with, like, it's not that important. Just read the story and enjoy what you can. And I was like, no, man, I take this too serious. I do take this kind of seriously. You know what I mean? The art of storytelling and stories and things like that, and which is good. If you're a creator, if you're a storyteller, if you're a writer, you need to take that stuff very seriously. And I just felt, okay, I'm taking this, as the reader, I'm taking this more seriously than the creators are, than the writers and DC editorial, the people who actually handle this. I'm taking this stuff more seriously than they are, and that shouldn't be the case, because they're the ones actually getting paid to do this stuff. So I was like, I'm checking out. And I think I was largely ahead of the curve with that because I saw the way it was going. Continuity doesn't matter. Your stories don't matter. You don't even make sense with yourself. And I think at this point now, people have just seen, it's kind of expected with them now. Before, back in the day, it's like, okay, you can change your continuity if you like do one of these big reboots that explains it, like your universe just got shook up some kind of way. That's what it was like back, in previous eras. But what it started to get like is, if the writer just doesn't feel like acknowledging the continuity, the writer just doesn't acknowledge the continuity, and that's okay. And I was like, that's not okay, because that continuity that the writer doesn't feel like acknowledging it, I paid to read it. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't matter, why did I pay to read it? You know, you're basically just telling me that the stories that you're printing here, they don't really matter. And, you know, I think at this point now, while I was hip to that when it was first starting to happen, I think by now everybody has seen that and everybody has felt that. These stories, the continuity's too loose. The stories just reboot and you don't get anywhere with these characters. It's like a hamster running on a treadmill, and you can't invest in anything like that. Um, so now, and the readers are aware of that. Uh, so now they're starting to, dip out just like I did way back long ago. I do read the occasional DC Comics comic when it interests me. I don't read anything at Marvel because not typically. Well, I mean, I read maybe like old stuff. Like I'll buy old. I just bought like an old Iron Man. Some stuff from the Lynn Kaminsky era, and Kevin Hopgood. Yeah, I was like reading some of, like, that's like 1990, 1991, 92. So I'll read old stuff, but the new stuff, I haven't really seen anything that like interests me too much. So I'm just letting this dry again. So these are some of the reasons why, you're losing people with these comics. And then, there's you're just not okay. So the people who already read your comic, for the reasons I stated, that read your comics, they're not happy with them, so they're leaving. There's not good enough discoverability for new people, and I don't think that the comic shop is, great at that. So it's like, how are new people even going to kind of get into this? It's kind of a okay, let's continue working on this head, and I want to darken up some of the darker areas even more. So I'm going to go with, let's see, we've been using persimmon and scarlet. How about we bring in crimson? All right. So and of course, then there's the issue of, honestly, and it goes back to like diminishing returns. And this is when I do talk to people, and I do talk to people. I talk to people who love, One Piece. Because when I talk to people about manga and stuff, or like they'll read comics, like they'll read webtoon or they'll read manga, and I actually do make it a point to ask sometimes, like, oh, what is your thought of like that, like DC and Marvel superhero stuff? And because they are conditioned to reading comics, but there's something in there that doesn't appeal to them. Like they'll read these comics, but they won't read those. So oftentimes I will kind of ask them, even as if I am taking a survey, because as a comic creator, even it's good to understand comic readers. Even they don't even need to be just your readers. It's good to just understand readers in general, like what brings them to the table, why do they like what they like, why do they not like other stuff. So as you see, we're getting all this complexity in here with the light and shadow with these watercolors here. This is a dye-based watercolor. Like, this is actually looking pretty cool. Let's zoom in a bit more on him. Okay, I can't right now. But, like, I would have to, like, stop the video, it seems, and, like, restart it to do that, and I don't feel like doing that. Yeah, it's coming along pretty good. Let's get some darker stuff in on this side. Yeah, it's good to understand like why people like the comics they do and why they don't like the comic, or why they avoid other comics. So I will actually, when I get the opportunity, pick people's brain, about that, like webtoon readers, manga readers, people who read other types of comics, you know. Um, and, you know, especially I like to talk to people who may have had a history of reading like Marvel and DC or liking that stuff, but they're not like one of these diehards that lasts like forever doing that, and they've moved on to some other kind of comic like One Piece. It's like, okay, well, what happened? Like, what makes you like interested or less interested in like say that Western stuff? And the answer I hear is the answer that a lot of like fans of it don't want to hear. I've noticed, like they can agree that like maybe the stories aren't good, but I think they might, some of them might fight you on this point, because I think it's like an answer a lot of them don't like. But again, these people are just being honest and, you know, telling me what they think. So it's worth hearing them out. And that is, it's the same thing over and over again. How many times can you keep doing Batman and Superman and Spider-Man? And, you know, they've seen that. You know, they've seen it in comic form, they've seen it in cartoon form, they've seen it in movie form. It's not that they don't like it. It's just that it's familiar, and they're the type of reader who doesn't actually want the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. That type of Marvel and DC like reader does, but some of these other people, no, like they're not excited enough by that, or they never loved that other stuff enough to want to constantly, you know, see it like again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And, you know, the characters don't really get anywhere. I guess what we're coming down to is that point about these stories don't end. And some people legit believe, I've talked to this, and I know a lot of people would like to debate this sort of fact, or debate this point. They're like, a story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end. Like some people, I know a lot of these people, the Marvel and DC reader loves Spider-Man so much, they just don't want it to ever end. But I think a lot of these other readers, they're like, no, it needs to end, and if it doesn't, it just gets too long in the tooth and too predictable, and the characters, nothing of note ever happens. And, you know, so that is another point. And I don't know, the Marvel and DC, you're just kind of done at that point. Like, you're just probably not really going to appeal to that reader too much. Like, I don't know that there's like really much you can do, because your whole model of storytelling is just not going to appeal to them. Like this never-ending story. You might be able to get them with like a different universe type of stuff, like the absolute stuff, because it's like a different take on Batman that might surprise them, and a different take on Batman that might end, or likely will end. So I think there's like potential there to interest them, and maybe that's why the absolute line has been popular, because it does seem like it's going more for that type of reader, you know, that type of manga reader. Just in like the visual style I've seen for some of it, and I think these stories will have ends. Okay, we're gonna do some lifting. I want to wet this paint. I want to keep this like bridge of the nose actually kind of light. So we're actually doing quite a bit of this is a technique called lifting. Okay, good. I think I got that. We're doing quite a bit of you know, shading and stuff in here. I think I want to do a bit of lifting over on this side of the face here, like this cheek area. so we can get that highlight lift up a little bit. Okay, not looking bad. Sometimes when you're doing like watercoloring and painting, sometimes it's good to just take a little break, reflect on like, you know, what you're doing, what you plan to do next. This is coming along pretty good. What I think I want to do is get this hair in even darker. And we're going to go, that's what we're doing. We're like starting with the lightest colors, preserving the whites of the paper for our lightest highlights, and then going them a darker layer on top of darker layer on top of darker layer to build that complexity with all these shadows and stuff. So yeah, I think, you know, and that is a smart move. Like let me present about the absolute stuff. Let me present a Batman that can end, maybe a Batman that does have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you know, that might be like one of the reasons why they've had some success, you know, with that, and maybe they've interested that type of reader more. But you know, yeah, we start up. Well, that has to do with the downfall of the comic shop. You can't separate the primary product they sell with, you know, the shops also going under. I think they're connected. You know what I mean? Um, so, and you know, when these publishers start to really lose the readers like that, what are these shops supposed to do? They're kind of at the mercy of whatever the publishers are doing. If the reader's not connected to the product that they're offering anymore, then they're in trouble. Well, what they can do is, like I said, kind of pivot to a different sort of model, which I think they are. And honestly, I go in these stores sometimes, and you know, people are in there playing games and um, doing stuff like that. So I think, you know, the smart ones will pivot. Like, okay, if the comics aren't selling, I'm going hard in on trading cards and tabletop. Like that's what it seems like you would need to do today to work. If you just want to be stubborn and sell comics, I think you might run into some trouble, you know, because the comics, like the interest as it is at this particular moment just doesn't seem to be particularly high for those. Um, but tabletop and trading cards I know are doing good, and I think again the reason for that is, first of all, they're fun when they're good, and there are good ones out there. And second of all, it's a way for like the geekier person, and I don't say that at all with like a hint of like it being a pejorative. It's a way for the geekier person to socialize and have fun, and you know, meet people and stuff like that. You know, play Dungeons and Dragons or one of its like gajillions of offshoots at this point, or derivatives. And you know, comics just aren't offering that. I mean, they are a way for people to come together, yeah, but not in quite the same way. And what's more is the comics that people are used to buying, the popular ones like Batman and Spider-Man and, you know, Superman and all that stuff. I think that is what I was saying. It's like you're getting diminishing returns. How long can you keep you can't keep doing these reboots that because the impact is less and less and less, and now you're at the point where nobody cares. And uh-oh, we could always lighten that up. I wanted to try to keep those eyes completely white, but that's not a problem. I went in there a little bit. Not a problem. And let's see, are there any other areas I want to darken up more? Maybe in here. So this guy's getting like extreme power here. So I did start off with wet into wet techniques, but when I want to do this more precision stuff, I'll go dry on wet. Well, that means the paper is dry, but I'm putting wet wet paint and water down on it. Wet and wet is like you saw me if you were paying attention. I wet the area I wanted to work in first, and then I went and painted over that while the paper was still wet. Here we don't want rough edges. Watercolor can be a very edgy medium where you get these rough edges if you're not careful. Like this is kind of rough over here. Like just one color straight into the next. And you got to kind of blend, your edges out well to avoid stuff like that. I can still work with that. Actually, that might work okay. What I think I want to do is add a little bit of darkness over here. This brush is probably too big to do what I want to do. I need to get a thinner one, but I'm gonna go for it. Okay, like that. So you're seeing all that complexity we're building up with the the various shades of red. All these were like reds that I was using, like various tints and shades of red. So I want to go in and darken this hair up quite a bit. And I think I'll do that. I'll get a black and go over top of it with black. I put this on really hard. Okay. So yeah, going back to going into comic book shops. For the modern indie creator, man, I don't know. I mean, it's like, okay, cool if you do, but it's like, I don't think it's something that a lot of creators are going to be bending over backwards to do. Not these days. To get into the comic book shop. Okay. And let's keep working up here. For all those reasons I mentioned, just for comics, you'll probably do better. I think other avenues would probably yield better results, because in the comic book shop, the people who are buying comics there aren't looking for you. Most likely they're not. The people selling the comics there probably aren't thinking about pushing you too hard, because they're thinking about their bread and butter, which is Batman. And the comic book shops aren't doing all that great anyway, so it's like you might find more success going through other avenues of discoverability and sales. As I said, Zatswan I am selling currently on Amazon.com. You can find that link in the description. In the description of this video. And if you do decide to pick it up, please leave me a review. That helps a lot. I like hearing what you guys think about it. And I like hearing what you like, and maybe even what you don't. It's helpful to know. And I think actually I might take a bit of a break. So this picture is by no means done. I'm going to continue working on it. But I think we want even darker colors. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take that black and actually mix it into more of a dark deep. Oh, I still have the mahogany to do. Maybe I'll do that. Still have the mahogany right here. So we'll go into some of the deeper shadows. I want to let that dry first so the colors don't bleed into each other. The paint and the water is only going to go where there's other water. So if it's like wet over here and you put some stuff down, it's going to bleed into that, but it won't bleed into a dry area. So we want to get this completely dry before we move on. But, this was a fun ramble about comic book shops and, how things work these days. I think to get back to the main point, indie creators, it's cool if you can get into those places, but I think for the indies, you'll probably have better luck doing things like building a social media presence, which there's a lot to talk about with that. It's kind of easy to build a social media presence. Well, I won't say it's easy. It's just probably not easy to build a social media presence, but it's easier to build one when you're kind of going for low hanging fruit like politics and drama and things like that. But I think what independent creators should do is focus on getting actual readers, not people who are just, hungry for, drama, because um I think in the long run that's not a good way to go, because you want people who are interested in your comic and who are coming back because of your comic, not people who are coming back for, not that your comic secondary or tertiary and they're coming back for drama or politics or something like that. Because the thing is, like, you're gonna have to keep doing that to get that. You're gonna have to keep doing that to get them to buy your thing, and then your focus is going to be on doing that, not doing your comics, and that's going to cause, like, we've seen things like that causes like a whole big issue. And then of course trust with your audience goes down because they're not getting the product they were supposed to, because you got to focus on farming all that drama and all that politics, because your audience isn't coming for your comic. Even though they're not coming for their comic, if they paid for something, they still want that thing. You know what I mean? Because they want what they feel they're owed, and they are owed that if they, paid for it. Okay, let's get our mahogany going. And it's just gonna like burn you out, and so I would say it's better to take, like, you can build faster if you want to do drama, but that's bad for your health. I did talk about that in like the Sean James video. Like, don't think that that type of stuff doesn't affect you, because it does. Um, and if you're like curious about all that stuff I was talking about, you can go and read or look at, the video I did. This mahogany is like really dark. Darker than I expected. I might want to water it down some, but don't worry, we can kind of redistribute it and lift some. Yeah, that mahogany is like very dark. That's cool. It kind of worked in here, and I want to darken. I'm going to take some of that and distribute it like down here and around this nose. Actually, that works for me. That works. That's what I kind of wanted. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use that mahogany, but we're going to water it down so it's not that concentrated. And we're going to like add it. This is coming together here. This is kind of like, it's kind of coming together more in the look that I was going for. So that actually worked out good. I'm going to actually do some wet to wet here. Like wet over here, wet down here, top of the lip, a bit of bottom of the nose. Let's get some mahogany and water it down. This is actually pretty good. So when I get like a map of how I want this head to work, that'll give me more of how I want to approach like the rest of his body. That's why I'm just focusing on this one area right now. Let's get in here. And there is a thing called drawing shift with watercolor. So, like, it's when you put it down, it's like very concentrated and dark. But as it dries, it'll like lighten up. So that's the thing you kind of want to take into consideration when you're watercoloring. Okay, so that's giving us a bit of this rich brown reddish tone, which is actually good. I like that quite a bit. Let's blend this out a bit more. I want to keep that chin highlighted. It's coming together, actually. I'm kind of liking this. And it's fun, you know, to ramble on about these things, you know, while I'm, you know, doing the art. So, let's continue laying down this mahogany, and then we might actually be done with this head once we do this, actually. And maybe that's just what I'll get in for this particular video. So it's pretty light over here. Let's lay down a little bit here and here. We might want to keep some of those areas like very light. A little bit here and a little bit there. And maybe around the eye a bit and down here. And we don't want to overwork the piece. So I might just keep this area kind of, maybe fade out a bit. Fade out this mahogany down into here. So we could get a bit of that brownish tone. This character's skin color actually is a brown. So it kind of works for that. I think that's kind of, I think this is what we want. I think this is what we want, actually. Let me see his eyebrow. Okay, let's maybe see if we could blend a little bit over here. Blend a little bit over here. Maybe do a lift. Okay, we gotta be a little careful. Lift. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's good. I wanted that highlight on that cheek there is what I wanted. I think this is, maybe get a smoother blend here. And I think this is kind of what I want for this head. Oh, got a little bit of a hard edge here. See what we can do about that. So yeah, we have to do the ears too, but I'll do that probably off camera or later. Do a little bit of a lift. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to get some permissing, a light color, and I want this to be a bit of a smoother transition here. So I'm going to lay the lighter color on top. And see what I can do, And we might want to take a scarlet. Okay, it's starting to bleed over into the side here, which is okay. That's okay, but I am going to dry this a bit, so. I don't like how that, well, I don't think I liked how that happened. So we might, well, actually, let's just blend it out a bit. I think we can just blend it a bit and fix that. Just using clean water there. And then maybe let it air dry. Okay, I think we should leave it at that. We don't want to overwork the head here. Alright everybody, well, again, be sure to pick up Zatswan in the link in the description and leave a review, and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel. That helps a lot, and of course it doesn't cost anything. So if you want to help out, you know, that is also a good way to help. And I will hopefully talk to all of you again soon, and thanks for giving me so much of your time. Take care.